In the not too distant future, we will be driven around by cars that drive themselves. We're moving from level two to two plus to level four autonomy with our vehicles. And one of the companies that is leading the way is Luminar with their Lidar for long range. This week, the company was announced as part of the reference design for NVIDIA's Hyperion 8. Its technology is found in the next generation of XC90 Volvos. And today we have CEO Austin Russell joining us here on Making Markets.
This is the Making Markets podcast, brought to you by Futurum Research. We bring you top executives from the world's most exciting technology companies, bridging the gap between strategy, markets, innovation, and the companies featured on the show. The Making Markets podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. Please do not take anything reflected in this show as investment advice. Now, your host, Principal Analyst and Founding Partner of Futurum Research, Daniel Newman.
Austin Russell, CEO of Luminar, welcome to Making Markets.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Super excited to see you again. We've crossed paths in the real world, which in COVID time is kind of odd. A couple times now, I saw you in Germany. I saw you at CODA at F1, where we had a very impromptu meeting in a parking lot. But it's good to see you again here on video. It looks like you're in San Jose, or where are you today?
Actually, today I am in Orlando, hence the kind of half palm tree.
That was a total. I absolutely missed that one. But you know what? It's just my natural gravity towards cool technology startups breaking things and disrupting things must be in San Jose. But I moved to Austin, so I'm hoping more of that's going to happen here as well. But
totally. Well, I mean, I think Orlando is interesting because out here, and we broke away from the traditional Silicon Valley trend, is the highest concentration of these type of LiDAR engineers out of anywhere in the world. It's actually all largely driven from the defense industry and a lot of these original systems that were pioneered out here. We do have a significant presence in Silicon Valley as well, in Palo Alto, which is great, and that's where a lot of our software is. But when it comes to core hardware development, advanced manufacturing, everything goes into that. That's out here.
It's funny that now that you said that, I still remember sitting in Germany talking to you, where you actually explained that whole thing to me. So it's a matter of memory and just. Gosh, the world is going fast right now. But that was a really great time, by the way, everyone out there. I had the chance with the Luminar team, with Austin here, to get into one of their LiDAR-powered vehicles, long-range LiDAR-powered vehicles. And I had a series of demonstrations, and I actually published some videos. I will put some links in the show notes, but I don't need Austin here to talk about all the great adventures we've had. We'll have many more adventures in the future. But just a quick start. I've got a couple questions for you. You just had earnings. You got some big announcements this past week, but I always like to just set the stage here on Making Markets. This show is all about getting between the lines, what the traditional coverage of companies often misses about them. And in your case, really interesting story. You mind giving just a quick couple-minute background on kind of how Luminar came to be and how you ended up in this space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so it started. It's approaching 10 years ago now. You develop a new type of LiDAR sensing system from the ground up to be able to enable autonomous cars in the industry to happen, for them to see and understand the world around them accurately, and ultimately building software on top of that to be able to power the industry and make vehicles substantially safer and ultimately eliminate vehicle accidents. So, it was a very intensive journey. We had to build out all the different components that we had from scratch in order to make this happen. There was no combination of off-the-shelf parts that could make this work. That's where we spent so many years just diving in, brought on some of the best engineers from around the world to be able to really execute against the vision that we had and the technology roadmap that I laid out. And this is something where we were able to produce effectively the first and only system that can actually meet this very stringent performance requirement that corresponds, safety, economics, scalability as an auto-grade system, for autonomous vehicles and actually going into production. And that was kind of the lead up. Scaled up the business pretty significantly over the past handful of years, and now, we even doubled in size alone this past year to now it's approaching 700, full time and equivalent folks. So it's been a great journey and ride. And with that, we're just continuing to focus to execute and win the industry.
And you have one of the coolest tickers in the market, Laser, LAZR, right? So
Yes.
if you don't follow the company, you wouldn't have the easiest time figuring out how Luminar ended up being Laser. Before I ask you about your earnings, is there any story there how that actually came to be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, we do lasers, so
Right, right, right. Yeah,
yeah,
you
so to
got
say.
that.
So with that, but it was actually to give credit to our CFO, it was his idea. We were debating between actually LT for Luminar Technologies was available, which was cool, but laser takes it to
I
like
love it, and yeah, that was sort of obvious to me, but it doesn't make the obvious connection to people because, given kind of the crazy year with SPACs, de-SPACing, with some meme stocks, and like I said, you're far from an actual meme stock based upon the
right.
type of technology you're building, but because you were a SPAC, you sometimes got rolled in, and people would see laser, and I would actually tell people about Luminar, and I'd be like, LAZR, and they'd be like, oh, I know that stock. And I'm like, you didn't know Luminar, and I'm like, they're the same thing, because people sometimes are looking for that obvious, you know, like Zoom, ZM, Microsoft,
Right.
MSFT, like something that's
Right,
super
right. Well,
logical. But
LMNR was actually but it was like taken, I think, by some mining corporation a while ago.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
no,
Well,
he's
that's not
exactly.
cool, and that's not cool. Like I said, I love the ticker, and I think it's a fun story to obviously be able to get something that's catchy like that.
Yeah.
So, speaking of laser ticker, you just announced earnings yesterday. Pretty significant revenue growth. Some strong overall announcements. Give me a quick overall impression on the quarter and the growth year over year.
Yeah, yeah. So the key is, with this is that we've just been executing to a T as it relates to product programs, everything, what it takes to see this industry through and deliver it. For this past quarter, we've actually really scaled up in terms of just number of new business wins that we've had. I mean, just in the past few months. I mean, and actually, just a couple of days ago, we had a big win with NVIDIA that we publicly announced and went out with, but also everyone from you know Polestar, Kodiak, Embark, Webasto, and Alpha. Like Mobileye just launched their vehicle. Like there's a lot that's happened, and that's just additive to what we've already had. So I couldn't have imagined how successful it would be. But that's also part of the reason why the prior quarter we raised guidance in number of new wins and everything. Obviously, there's revenues and other things, all that I mean that are right now. But I'd say any revenues, other stuff that are happening today are from previously won programs, and now the real key is how you get to series production. That's where the financials really start mattering to a significant degree of scaling this up, penetrating the technology, and seeing that market adoption that it takes to be able to really proliferate this and standardize this, and that's what's only been accelerated.
Yeah, so to kind of give the viewer a little bit more clarity there, for instance, Luminar announced a partnership not too long ago with Volvo, and right around the XC90, I believe it is.
Right, right. So Volvo is using our tech, and they're actually going to be deploying it in series production. You just actually not too far around the corner here on consumer vehicles, things that you can buy. This is
Right.
historically this kind of tech has been constrained to test vehicles and development vehicles that are owned by autonomous vehicle development companies.
Yeah, the crazy Apple cars with the giant lidar systems on the roof. That's what most people think about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can see the Googles and, as you said, Apples, or all the other types of tech companies, and even Waymo, Cruise, Argo, Aurora. They have these huge roof racks full of sensing systems and a supercomputer in the trunk to run the thing. Is a totally different transformation where it's actually being embedded onto production vehicles, and that's something that's really an industry first to be able to make this happen. And it's pretty exciting to see it through. And Volvo, of course, they've historically had a strong brand in safety, and that's what they've driven forward. Where introduce new safety technologies before they get standardized throughout the rest of the industry. And that's exactly what's happening here as well. So not only is it going to be an option on the vehicles, it's now going to be embedded on new Volvo vehicles and platforms introduced as standard starting with the all-electric XC90. So that's the cool.
Yeah, what I was trying to reiterate there, Austin, was, when you talk about where does the revenue come, it's those kinds of wins that start to really aggregate into significant, more predictable revenue growth, right? And you start to see it in series, and you start to see it across their portfolio. And these OEMs, they implemented it in one vehicle, and then they implemented it across all their vehicles. And then you got bigger targets out there with some of these names, where they have like a Volkswagen Group. I'm not saying you have that, but I'm saying where they have 20 20 different, and then you start to create real scale for this technology being implemented. And I think there's two big things happening that, at least from my perspective as a third party, because I don't want you to have to speak to this, but is that as they start to get standardized and people see that LiDAR technology, which can accomplish a lot of things that traditional sensor and radar cannot, can be safely added at an affordable price. And you and I had a long talk about this in Germany. It really becomes the required standard to meet what consumers want in the market, is say, hey, you're telling me you can offer another level of safety and you can make it affordable within the realm of what I'm going to pay for my next vehicle. Why would you not do that? And it starts to become a question that really becomes a favorable situation for a company like Luminar.
Totally, 100%. And I think that's absolutely it. And this is that whole next generation wave of technology. And in fact, if you can actually have a safety benefit that's so significant, like at this level, because here's the thing: like 95% of accidents were caused by human error, and there's the direct opportunity to be able to prevent that with this kind of tech. So, moving towards the vision of ultimately building the uncrashable car, so to say, and with that. The distinction here is the savings from safety are actually so significant. I mean, there's an ultimate vision of where you see this almost just included for free on every vehicle that's out there, just by recapturing the safety savings and everything from an insurance perspective and from other things. Obviously, that's over the longer term, but this is something that automakers are willing to already make bets on today, like Volvo has, and ultimately like other automakers will as well. Now, of course, a lot of times it starts on higher end vehicles and proliferates down to mid range and lower range vehicles. But that said, I mean, this doesn't have to be on a supercar, to start out. It's already going on mainstream vehicle platforms.
Yeah, and that's what I really liked. And by the way, when I saw the way long range could get out in front of a vehicle, where a child running out after a ball, and it could actually be the difference between traditional L2 plus ADAS technologies using radar and sensors versus using LiDAR, I watched in real time one child be legitimately run over and the other one's life was saved. And if that doesn't make you think twice when you're at the dealership about what kind of technology you want in your car, you need to see that demo.
Right. And for sake of clarity, these are crash dummies. Yes.
Yes, I apologize if I wasn't clear on that. Thank you. They did not use any real humans in these demonstrations. So you mentioned Hyperion 8. NVIDIA had a huge week with GTC, and this was a big week for you. And it was something that I thought was worth reiterating here on Making Markets, because the initial announcement came out, and of course they talked about a handful of different LiDAR technologies being compatible with Hyperion 8. But it looked to me, and from what I understand, is that Luminar's technology was chosen as reference design, which is like gold in the world of being a partner with a company like NVIDIA. Big deal for you guys? Excited? Is that going to be you see that as a pretty big growth vehicle?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the maybe the biggest wins that we had this year. So, it's a platform play. So being integrated into their full stack solution that they're developing their stack on top of is absolutely key. And again, there's an important distinction here too. NVIDIA works with a lot of different companies there too that, like, say, buy their chips or like compatible with building stuff that could work on chips. That's not what we're talking about here. That's, I don't think, particularly newsworthy. But maybe if there was any confusion on that with other companies, the key distinction here is they're actually building the full stack on top of the data, on top of our LiDAR, on top of these capabilities, such that, when they're winning, in the industry, we're winning right alongside with them. And that's what makes it really interesting and valuable. So, it's ultimately, we've really cornered a lot of the market at this stage of, you take a look at the two key players of this. You have NVIDIA and you have Mobileye. and from a compute standpoint, and that's something that from a systems perspective we've been designed into both. And additionally, we work with OEMs directly ourselves as well. There's a lot of different aspects of it, but we're creating the scenario of the heads we win, tails we win type circumstance. Where regardless of the specific outcome of who they're working with, which we do think that NVIDIA is incredibly promising and they have a lot ahead of themselves, but that will be alongside it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a company there that's had massive momentum. I wrote a piece in Market Watch about a year and a half ago where I said that they're going to be the next $1 trillion company. And
Well, that was a bold bet at the time, but hey, it's happening, right?
it was right around when it's basically hedging on the ARM deal getting done, which is probable. But some of these advancements in other areas like Omniverse, and of course they call it Omniverse. Some people are calling it Metaverse. It's basically the blending of our, it's basically you and I having this conversation in
Right.
avatar form in sometime in the future, right?
Should we now announce that Luminar is compatible with the metaverse?
Well, I'd hope so. I mean, you gotta get that, you guys got to get that synthetic data. You got to be able to do that. I'm kind of kidding, but the digital twin, right, is a great way to get a whole bunch more data for real world applications. And I don't know if you're actually doing that, but it's certainly a way to test crash safety and stuff like that. And we're going to see more and more of that as these technologies continue to proliferate.
One last thing I was going to say though, is it actually if you look at our lidar data and everything, it almost feels like you're in the Matrix in some ways too, as you're like flying through it. I don't know if you saw that in the demo with all the different colors and all that stuff. It's truly a 3D map of everything going on. So I guess there is actually some legit correlation. But anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's a great point. It's something we're definitely gonna be going up against. So with just a couple minutes I have left, you guys are ahead or on par right now with I think you guys have your big 5 milestones, and it looks like you guys have met all of them.
Yeah. I mean, we'll do the official tally for the end of the year, but we've been beating pretty much or meeting all of them at this stage, and we actually raised guidance on a few of them even in this past quarter. So, and we've been tracking to that well. We've been tracking to all of our our respective internal goals, milestones for what we've talked about publicly. That's been good, but for sure, it's really important to be able to also just be open about how you're measuring big picture progress. For this, obviously, there's a lot of different things that we have going on internally, but the question is like, what does it mean? Like, how do you measure overall progress for the business and where you're going? And that's something that's been it's been exciting for us and just powering through, getting it done. I think we would all be pretty blown away if we said at the beginning of the year what we were able to accomplish now. So it's been good.
Well, it's going to only continue to move faster. So right around the corner, the world has opened up a little bit. Like I said, we saw each other in public. The safety requirements were pretty stringent, and but we have a couple of COVID-19 pills now, therapeutics coming out, and they're going to be available in abundance. So between the vaccine, the therapeutics, and I think the overwhelming desire by society to get back to some level of normalcy and events and mobility, it looks like CES is going to happen. It looks like MWC is going to happen. I imagine you guys are going to be at both of these. Any big predictions as to some of the big announcements and what to expect in the new year from Luminar and then from the broader EV ADAS connected vehicle space?
Yeah, so I mean, for CES, we are all in. We're gonna have a blowout CES. I would say with all these different things we got going on. We're gonna be doing so. We're actually gonna be showing off our software stack for the first time publicly. With live demonstrations there too for anyone to be able to go in. It's gonna be in a really interesting setup of both our vehicles and Luminar equipped vehicles as well as existing vehicles of how they do in these kind of proactive safety situations. So imagine kind of Dan, what you experienced in Germany, but to the extreme. And then equivalently, we're going to be launching a couple other things as well, which will be some exciting stuff and making it a reality. But you'll have to see it, check it out. So, would welcome anyone that's that's thinking going to go and come on and check out what we got going on, as well as everything else. It'll be seemingly the first kind of major event that's happening, in a post-COVID or since the start of COVID, so to say. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, what a just absolute crazy year and a half it's been. So
Yeah, seriously.
last question before I let you fly. It's my favorite question to ask here on Making Markets. What do you think maybe is the biggest thing that the market or that people are not appreciating about your company that they should be?
It's a fair question. I think there's actually a lot to it. Is that people are very good at looking at the surface level, but then the question is that everything that goes down beneath it. And I think I would say the big picture, the most significant thing is that we really have just from a positioning standpoint in the broader market, I think we have the only clear trajectory and technical capability for how to actually capitalize and monetize on the holistic autonomous vehicle theme and trend. And by leveraging existing production vehicles and OEMs and lines and everything that goes into that, there's a lot of different efforts going on with robo taxis, with assisted driving efforts like a la the Tesla autopilots of this world that sometimes people try and call self-driving that are not self-driving at all.
Clearly, based on the track record.
Exactly. And that's it's assisted driving, and that's the problem is people get confused because the naming is weird. And the same thing for robo taxi systems. They're full systems, but these are, like I said, they have $100,000 roof racks full of sensing systems and a supercomputer in the trunk. So that doesn't work either. We've compressed all that tech, amplified the performance of it 10x, and gotten it down into this $1,000 system that can actually go into a car that you can buy from OEMs that produce these vehicles at scale. And that's the thing that I still think sometimes it can be lost on folks. And at the same time, too, a lot of people see us as a LiDAR company specifically, or kind of like a component company of what's the difference between all of this and what's going on. The reality is that we are all in as a solutions company, a software company, as much as anything with our hardware, to be able to enable this. And that's like the stuff of what you saw. There's so much that goes into that stack to enable an end-to-end solution that's unlike what anyone in the industry has seen or is capable of developing at this stage. And that's where we really have the first opportunity to capitalize and monetize. And I think the other side of it is obviously is that I think that there's a broader trend of there's a lot of different types of companies out there. There's interesting, particularly in the past year, a lot of obviously SPACed companies as well. We were at the forefront of kind of that trend, and I think people really took it to heart, and I think saw some of the success that we had among a couple other companies. But I think that part of the challenge is that there's been a lot of variation in quality of companies as well that have gone public, and it's interesting to see that all play out of where we're obviously staying super focused on the core vision and what we're doing, because we know that there's a direct opportunity to win the industry if we can and build an incredibly valuable business. The ultimate goal is to try and build as one of the next great technology companies of our generation, but it's going to take a lot to get there. And I think with that, we're being able to see the technology that we have is here today, and we have to successfully execute and deploy it. We're not trying to fundamentally build something new. There's a lot of companies that probably very much shouldn't be public at this stage or shouldn't be out there with certain sets of claims and everything. We're trying to build a lot of trust and credibility here, and to be able to execute over the long term and have that kind of 5-year and 10-year type time horizon on what we want to do. So that's the quick overview, I'd say, of that can be overlooked holistically when it comes down to it, but it's a really important one.
Well, you hit it on the head, and you gave me way more than I could have hoped for there, Austin. I appreciate that. I mean, obviously, you guys are doing things that can impact the world immediately, that can support the current and existing OEMs to be able to make safer vehicles, to help them get to the level 4 through a solutions approach. And then, of course, I do like the fact that you pointed that out. Not all SPACs or publicly traded companies are created equal, and that sometimes because of some of the stuff that happened later in that whole SPAC craze, some people are judging based upon that. And Luminar certainly is doing disruptive stuff and is in the market today. So Austin Russell, CEO Luminar, thank you so much for joining Making Markets.
All right, thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Making Markets. Enjoy what you heard? Please subscribe to get every episode on your favorite podcast platform. You can also watch us on the web at futurumresearch.com/makingmarkets. Until next time, this is Making Markets, your essential show for market news, analysis, and commentary on today's most innovative tech companies.